The New Friday the 13th, Chapter 1. The town of Eldridge. Eldridge was a small, unremarkable town nestled in the heart of a dense forest, far removed from the hustle and bustle of modern life. Its streets were lined with quaint houses, and the townsfolk prided themselves on their tight-knit community. But beneath the surface of this idyllic town lay a dark history that few dared to speak of. Every year, the townspeople held a festival to celebrate the arrival of spring. It was a time for laughter, music, and joy. However, this year was different. This year, the festival coincided with Friday the 13th, a date that sent shivers down the spines of the locals. For generations, Eldridge had been haunted by a series of unexplained tragedies that always seemed to occur on this ominous day. As the sun dipped below the horizon on the eve of the festival, a palpable tension filled the air. The townspeople busied themselves with decorations, but their smiles were strained, and their laughter felt hollow. They all knew the stories, tales of disappearances, accidents, and strange occurrences that had plagued Eldridge for decades. Chapter 2. The legend. The legend began long before anyone could remember. It was said that a witch named Agatha had lived in Eldridge centuries ago. She was accused of practicing dark magic and was ultimately executed by the townsfolk. In her dying breath, she cursed the town, vowing that every Friday the 13th would bring misfortune and despair. As the years passed, strange things began to happen. People would go missing without a trace, crops would fail, and accidents would occur with alarming frequency. The townsfolk tried to dismiss it as mere coincidence, but deep down, they knew better. The curse was real, and it loomed over Eldridge like a dark cloud. Chapter 3. The newcomer. This year, a newcomer arrived in Eldridge, a young woman named Sarah. She had moved to the town seeking a fresh start after a tumultuous past. With her bright smile and infectious energy, she quickly endeared herself to the townspeople. However, Sarah was oblivious to the dark history that surrounded her new home. On the night of the festival, Sarah excitedly joined the festivities, unaware of the whispers that followed her. As she danced and laughed with her new friends, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The air felt thick with anticipation, and shadows seemed to flicker just beyond her line of sight. Chapter 4. The first incident. As midnight approached, a sense of dread settled over Eldridge. The festival reached its peak with fireworks lighting up the sky. But just as they burst into brilliant colors, a scream pierced through the night. The crowd fell silent as they turned toward the source of the sound. A young boy named Tommy had gone missing. Panic erupted as parents called out for their children, and search parties formed almost immediately. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine as she joined the search, her heart racing. Hours passed, with no sign of Tommy. The townspeople were frantic, their fear palpable. Just as they were about to give up hope, a group of children stumbled upon something in the woods. Something that would change everything. Chapter 5. The discovery. The children had found Tommy's lifeless body lying among the trees, his eyes wide open in terror. A collective gasp echoed through the crowd as they rushed to see what had happened. Sarah felt her stomach drop as she caught sight of Tommy's pale face. It was clear he had met a horrific fate. The sheriff arrived on the scene, his face grim as he examined the area. "We need to get everyone back to town," he ordered. "This isn't safe." But as they retreated back to Eldridge, whispers spread like wildfire. Some claimed they saw shadows moving in the woods, others insisted they heard laughter echoing through the trees. The townsfolk were on edge, their fear morphing into paranoia. Chapter 6. The investigation. In the days that followed Tommy's death, strange occurrences began to plague Eldridge. Pets went missing, strange symbols appeared carved into trees, and an unnatural fog rolled in each night. Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that something sinister was at play. Determined to uncover the truth behind Tommy's death and the town's dark legacy, Sarah enlisted the help of her new friend, Mark, a local historian who had spent years researching Eldridge's past. Together, they delved into old records and spoke to townsfolk who were willing to share their stories. As they pieced together the history of Agatha and her curse, they realized that Tommy wasn't the first victim of Friday the 13th. He was merely the latest in a long line of tragedies that had befallen Eldridge. Chapter 7. The ritual. Sarah and Mark discovered an old book in the town library that contained accounts of rituals performed by Agatha before her execution. According to legend, she had sought revenge against those who wronged her by performing dark magic on Friday the 13th. The final entry in the book hinted at a ritual that could break Agatha's curse, but warned that it required a sacrifice, something that made Sarah's blood run cold. They debated whether they should attempt it or leave well enough alone. With each passing day, fear gripped Eldridge tighter. The townsfolk grew increasingly suspicious of one another. Accusations flew as paranoia set in. Sarah felt an urgency to act before more lives were lost. Chapter 8. The gathering storm. As Friday the 13th approached once again, Sarah and Mark gathered a small group of brave townsfolk who were willing to confront their fears and face Agatha's curse head-on. They planned to perform the ritual deep in the woods where Agatha had once lived. The night was eerily quiet as they made their way through the forest, flashlights flickering against the darkness. Sarah's heart raced as she led the group deeper into the woods, feeling an unseen presence watching them. When they reached a clearing marked by ancient stones covered in moss, they set up for the ritual. They lit candles and recited incantations from the old book. But just as they began to feel hope swell within them, a chilling wind swept through the clearing. Chapter 9. The confrontation. Suddenly, shadows emerged from the trees. Figures cloaked in darkness with hollow eyes that glowed like embers. They surrounded Sarah and her friends, their whispers echoing through the night like a haunting melody. "Foolish mortals," one figure hissed. "You dare challenge us?" Sarah's heart raced as she realized these were not mere shadows. They were manifestations of Agatha's wrath, spirits bound by her curse. "We seek to end your torment," Sarah shouted defiantly. "We will not be your victims." But as she spoke those words, she felt an overwhelming sense of dread wash over her. The spirits lunged forward, their icy fingers grasping at her throat. Chapter 10. The sacrifice. In that moment of terror, Sarah remembered the final entry in Agatha's book. It spoke of a sacrifice that could break the curse, but warned that it would come at a great cost. "Someone must take my place," Sarah cried out desperately. "I will do it." Mark grabbed her arm, panic etched across his face. "No, we can find another way." But deep down, Sarah knew there was no other way. She stepped forward as shadows closed in around her. "I will be your sacrifice," she declared defiantly. The spirits paused for a moment before engulfing her in darkness. As Sarah felt herself being pulled away from her friends, she closed her eyes and focused on breaking Agatha's curse. Chapter 11. Breaking free. In an instant, Sarah found herself standing in a void. Darkness enveloped her completely. But then she saw a faint light ahead. It flickered like a candle in the wind. With every ounce of strength she had left, she moved toward it. As she approached, she realized it was Agatha herself, an ethereal figure, shrouded in sorrow and rage. "Why do you seek to end my curse?" Agatha asked, her voice echoing through the void. "Because we deserve to live without fear," Sarah shouted back defiantly. Agatha's expression softened for just a moment before hardening again. "To break this curse requires sacrifice. I'm willing to make that sacrifice," Sarah replied firmly. Agatha hesitated before finally nodding slowly. "Then you shall take my place." Chapter 12. The final battle. As Sarah felt herself being pulled back into reality, she realized she had made a choice, one that would change everything for Eldridge forever. Back in the clearing, Mark and their friends watched in horror as shadows swirled around them before suddenly dissipating into nothingness. For a moment, silence reigned over the woods before dawn broke on Friday the 13th. The curse was broken. No more lives would be lost in Eldridge due to Agatha's wrath. But Sarah was gone, sacrificed, to end the cycle of terror that plagued their town for so long. Chapter 13. A new beginning. In time, Eldridge began to heal from its dark past. The festival continued each year without fear or dread. Instead, it became a celebration of life and remembrance for those lost along the way. Mark often visited Sarah's favorite spot in town, an old oak tree where they used to sit and talk about their dreams for the future. He knew she would always be with him in spirit, though Friday the 13th would always hold a special significance for Eldridge. It became a day of remembrance rather than fear, a day to honor those who had come before them and those who had sacrificed everything for their freedom. And as each year passed without incident or tragedy on that fateful day, Mark felt hopeful that perhaps one day soon Eldridge would finally be free from its haunted legacy, once and for all. Chapter 14. The echoes of the past. As the years rolled on, the town of Eldridge embraced its newfound peace. The annual festival had transformed into a vibrant celebration, drawing visitors from neighboring towns who marveled at the stories of resilience and community spirit. Yet, beneath the surface, a few lingering shadows remained. Mark, now a local historian and storyteller, often recounted the tale of Sarah's sacrifice to anyone willing to listen. He emphasized the importance of remembering their past, not just to honor those who had been lost, but to ensure that history would not repeat itself. Despite the town's progress, whispers of Agatha's curse still echoed in hushed conversations. One evening, as Mark prepared for his storytelling session at the town hall, he stumbled upon an old trunk in the attic of his home. Inside were relics from Eldridge's past, faded photographs, letters, and a dusty journal that belonged to Sarah. His heart raced as he opened it, eager to uncover more about her thoughts and dreams. Chapter 15. The Journal's Secrets. The journal was filled with Sarah's reflections on her life in Eldridge, her hopes for the future, and her fears about the curse that had haunted the town for so long. As Mark read through the pages, he found entries detailing her growing connection with the townsfolk and her determination to help them heal. But there was something else. A series of entries about strange occurrences she had noticed leading up to her sacrifice. Sarah had documented instances of shadows moving in the corners of her vision, whispers that seemed to call out to her, and an overwhelming sense of being watched. It was as if Agatha's presence lingered even after the curse was broken. Mark felt a chill run down his spine as he realized that perhaps the battle was not entirely over. He decided to gather a few trusted friends, those who had stood by him during the darkest days, to discuss what he had discovered. Chapter 16. The gathering of friends. That evening, Mark invited his closest friends, Emma, a skilled herbalist, Jake, a local mechanic, and Leela, an artist known for her vivid depictions of Eldridge's landscapes. They gathered around a flickering fire in Mark's backyard, the air thick with anticipation. I found something, Mark began, holding up Sarah's journal. It seems like Agatha's influence might still be lingering in some form. Emma leaned forward, her brow furrowed in concern. What do you mean? I thought we broke the curse. According to Sarah's entries, she felt something watching her even before she made her sacrifice. Mark explained. I think we need to investigate further, not just for our peace of mind, but for the safety of Eldridge. Jake nodded in agreement. If there's still a threat out there, we can't ignore it. We owe it to Sarah and everyone else who suffered. Leela felt a shiver run down her spine. What do we do? How do we confront something we thought was gone? Chapter 17. The Unraveling. Determined to uncover the truth, the group set out to retrace Sarah's steps. They visited the clearing where they had performed the ritual years ago, now overgrown but still steeped in memories. As they stood in silence, Mark felt an eerie sensation wash over him, as if the very air around them was charged with energy. "Let's set up a small camp here," Emma suggested. "We can spend the night and see if anything unusual happens." As dusk fell and darkness enveloped them, they lit a fire and shared stories about their lives since that fateful day. Laughter echoed through the trees, but it was soon replaced by an unsettling silence. Suddenly, shadows began to flicker at the edge of their campfire light. The friends exchanged nervous glances as they felt a chill creep into their bones. It was then that they heard it, soft whispers carried on the wind. Words indistinguishable yet hauntingly familiar. Chapter 18. Confronting the Shadows. With hearts pounding, they decided to investigate the source of the whispers. Armed with flashlights and courage, they ventured deeper into the woods. As they moved further away from their campfire, the shadows seemed to dance around them, always just out of reach. "Do you think it could be Agatha?" Leela whispered nervously. "I don't know," Mark replied, his voice steady despite his fear. "But we have to confront whatever this is." As they approached a clearing bathed in moonlight, they found themselves surrounded by swirling mist. The whispers grew louder, forming words that echoed through their minds. "You have disturbed my rest suddenly." A figure emerged from the mist, a spectral form resembling Agatha herself. Her eyes glowed with an otherworldly light as she gazed at them with a mix of sorrow and rage. Chapter 19. The Reckoning. "Why do you return?" Agatha's voice resonated like thunder through the trees. "You think you can undo what has been done?" Mark stepped forward, his heart racing, but his resolve unwavering. "We came here to understand your pain and to find peace for our town. We didn't mean to disturb you." Agatha's expression softened slightly as she regarded them. "You seek peace, yet you tread upon my legacy without understanding its weight." Emma spoke up bravely. "We know what you went through, Agatha. We want to break this cycle of fear and suffering once and for all." Agatha's form flickered, as if caught between two worlds. "To break my legacy requires more than mere words. It demands understanding and acceptance." Chapter 20. A choice made. The friends exchanged worried glances as they realized what Agatha was asking of them. They needed to confront not only her past but their own fears and prejudices surrounding it. "We accept your legacy," Mark said firmly. "We acknowledge your pain and suffering, but we also believe in redemption and healing." As he spoke those words, Agatha's expression shifted from anger to something resembling hope. "Then perhaps there is a way forward." The mist thickened around them as Agatha began to weave together memories. Images of her life before the accusations, moments of joy overshadowed by betrayal and fear. The friends were drawn into her memories, experiencing her pain firsthand. Chapter 21. Healing together. In that moment of shared experience, Mark and his friends understood Agatha's torment, how she had been wronged by those she once trusted. They felt her sorrow and anger transform into something else, a deep longing for acceptance and understanding. As they emerged from the vision, Agatha stood before them transformed, no longer a figure of wrath, but one seeking closure. "Will you help me find peace?" she asked softly. Mark nodded without hesitation. "Yes, we will honor your memory and share your story so that no one else suffers as you did." With those words, Agatha smiled faintly before slowly dissipating into shimmering light that filled the clearing. The shadows that had haunted Eldridge began to lift, replaced by warmth and clarity. Chapter 22. A New Legacy. The following morning dawned bright and clear. Mark and his friends returned to Eldridge with newfound purpose. They shared their experience with the townsfolk, recounting Agatha's story not as a villain, but as a victim of circumstance. In time, they established an annual remembrance event dedicated to Agatha, one that celebrated forgiveness and healing rather than fear. Eldridge transformed into a place where stories were told openly, where history was acknowledged rather than hidden away. As for Mark, He continued to tell Sarah's story alongside Agatha's, ensuring that their legacies intertwined in a narrative of hope rather than despair. Epilogue: the future unfolds years later. Eldridge thrived as a community known for its resilience and compassion. The festival continued each spring, now filled with laughter and joy rather than dread. Mark often visited Sarah's favorite oak tree, where he would sit quietly and reflect on how far they had come. He knew that both Sarah and Agatha would forever be part of Eldridge's history, not as ghosts haunting its past, but as guiding spirits illuminating its future. And on every Friday the 13th thereafter, instead of fearing what might come next, the townsfolk gathered together under the old oak tree to celebrate life, love, and the power of understanding, knowing that even in darkness, there is always a path toward light.